This is Squidder Dragon of No Goblins Allowed. This is just a preview video of the match that I will be playing on Saturday. Um, my opponent is Nadia, who's running a Drake deck. It's specifically using the Arc-like Phoenix in particular, returning from the graveyard with haste. The deck is powered by 4 Goblin Electromancers, which gives her access to cheaper casting of spells. So new culprit for cheap spells: 4 Opts, 4 Shocks, 4 Radical Idea. You've got 1 Maximum Velocity from the haste point of view with a Drake, 4 Charter Course, 4 Discovery, Removal, 3 Lava Coil in conjunction with the Shocks. It's interesting, the sideboard is got removal. So 3 Syncopate, 3 Disdainful Strokes, Trancing Melody to steal a creature, some removal with Beacon Bolt, Murmuring Mystic, which gives access to tokens. She's got a couple of Planeswalkers, 2 Rals. She's got a singleton Niv and 2 Firemind's Research, which is an enchantment that is powered by casting instants and sorceries for card draw and damage. It's interesting. I think when I looked at the matchup on the main deck, I'm assuming that I might be slightly less favoured in the matchup, simply because of the Goblin Electromancers being able to get spells out quicker, so the Drakes will be a bit bigger when they come out. Fast spells means Arc-like Phoenix, but of course they work best when they're coming from the graveyard, so she might be using things like Charter Course to discard cards into the graveyard, and obviously dumping Phoenixes in the graveyard and then using Electromancers to cast some fast spells. Interesting thing about the Arc-like Phoenix in the matchup is Arc-like Phoenix really doesn't go up well against any of the other Drakes in terms of a toughness, power versus toughness. The Arc-like Phoenix, with its mana cost, cannot get through a Drake, where a typical Drake, where she has, like Crackling Drake as an example, she has up here, that has a toughness of 4. So from that point of view, if I have a Drake out, I don't have to worry so much about the Arc-like Phoenixes. It's more, I think, in the original matchup, it's access to the Goblin Electromancer that I don't run a lot of removal, apart from removal I really want to be keeping for the Arc-like Phoenixes, for example. So it's interesting. What I wanted to do is just, this is the opponent's deck I'm facing and my views of the round 1 match. And now what I wanted to go into is look at the deck sideboard in particular. I did another video on the deck and its main sideboard and choices. What I want to do here is just very quickly, based on that matchup, is just go back now into Arena, and let me just change the recording over. So if I say I want to capture this Arena screen, just bear with me while I fiddle around with this. So let's have a look at the deck sideboards that I had. So my initial idea in the mirror, and this is the mirror version of the deck. The initial idea with the mirror was to try and bring in, let's just change this display if I can. Yeah, so the idea was to try and bring in more counter removal from the sideboard, more of the removal spells. The thinking was that with this version, bear with me. Yeah, in this version, I was sideboarding in from what would be the main deck. The beacon bolts, more removal in effect. I've always had the idea with having these gravitic punches in the sideboard that I could use a gravitic punch that is basically acts like a fling when the drakes get big enough. In terms of looking at the Goblin Electromancers and trying to sort of control that or have more removal for that, I went in and brought in the other removal I've got. So I was turning it more into a burn-like deck to be anti for the Electromancers. So I put beacon bolts in. I added in the extra lava coil. I think I normally run 3 and this went up to 4. So this particular sideboarding choice, and I play tested this, and you know, as I said, you can't pick. I'm not preparing with like another NGA casually, you know, to say play this type of deck and see how it goes. So I'm just playing standard matches now. Fortunately, I was matched up against the kind of deck that I'm going to be facing, and you know, particularly the not just a Drake deck, but a Drake deck with arc lights. So I mean, that was quite interesting. But I found when I was running this version, and one of the tests I have, in particular when I first took this out and was trying it out against different decks, obviously just getting used to how the sideboarded version worked, I came very close actually. I think it was about, I had the opponent on 1 mana, but yeah, I just felt that particularly the deck I was playing against, it was an Arclight deck, but that particular deck had more removal, you know, counter spells, and you know, a timely counter spell was just enough to swing it, so that and you know, as I said, it was quite it made me rethink the strategy of worrying too much about the Electromancers and bringing in this other removal for the Electromancers. So instead, the idea then was to go back to have a more using more the controlling aspects of the deck. So this is in the game too, depending on the assumption. As I say, I think I just feel that I'm less prepared until I sideboard to go against the maybe faster deck, faster in the fact that the Electromancers gives access to spells, so the Drakes will be a bit bigger, etc., etc. So the idea in this sideboarding choice, which I called the controlling version, what I do instead is go in much more for using the counterspells strategy from the sideboard. So as you can see, I put in 2 essence scatters, which allows me, I mean, the target there really is not to be targeting, and not necessarily the Arc-Light Phoenixes either. The targets here are the Drakes, because the Drakes, when the Drakes come out, the Drakes are bigger, and obviously they get more powerful, more potent from a power point of view with the spells that are on there. So if I can run some counter spells and equally putting in more of my own removal, like negates for the other spells that are non-Drake spells, you know, whether it's countering, it's cheap enough, whether I'm countering a counter that my opponent might be playing, because you've seen there's quite a lot of counter in their sideboard. So I go up to the extra lava coil, because again, if she is bringing Drakes out, lava coil of course deals with it and exiles it. So the lava coils are pretty key anyway in the matchup, because of if it's hitting the arc light, it's also exiling it, so it doesn't risk coming back. So this, I just wanted to do this thought process in terms of the 2 sideboarding choices. And again, I think particularly when we get into having a bit more controlling, and therefore giving me a much more chance to assemble the mana, it tends to be reasonable with the treasure maps ramping you up with extra mana from the treasures to be able to cast Niv on turn. And of course, in comparison to my opponent's deck, I have 4 Nivs. So whilst Niv is legendary, the idea of having the 4 Nivs in there is guaranteeing cast. So my deck, more the strategy of the win condition primarily is focused around casting Niv and then riding Niv to victory and controlling Niv. As you see here in this version, I bring in the extra like dive down, so it's also useful for protecting the other Drakes, but the idea is that when Niv comes out, and of course the good thing about Niv is I don't have to worry about the opponent's counter spells, because obviously it's can't be countered, right? So the idea here is that if I can get, you know, great if I win game 1, because I still feel I'm a little bit favoured against that. So on the assumption that I lose game 1, but then I sideboard for games 2, and then hopefully this change is successful in taking game 2, and I think the game 2 and then the game 3, and again my opponent may well board in from her side. She has counter spells, she might bring in more counter spells, but she'll be then facing my deck with counter spells as well. And I think particularly where she's trying to put counters in, you know, to obviously counter my threats and sort of provide more ammunition for the Drakes and the arc lights, I think these, you know, choices, particularly on the control side. And then of course I still have, which has always been main deck, Ionize is a counter spell, but I bring in an additional 2, and then obviously 4 additional. I do have the Gravitic Punch, but in this case, because it's Jumpstart anyway, rather than having 2, which is I was trying to do previously, where the idea was just to, you know, keep the board slower from the opponent's side by having the removal with the beacon bolts in particular, being able to cast them multiple times, take care of the Electromancer's slow their deck down a little bit, I was running the two sideboarded cards I have for Gravitic Punch to make it more likely to be able to draw them, and then of course once they're drawing, because of the jump start, it's not just being able to cast it once but cast it twice with the jump start to be able to do damage equal to target player power. So as the drakes get more powerful, this is the idea. So this was just to finish off my sideboard video, just to show the two variants, and I'm almost certain, again, I could always tailor it based on how well game one goes. If it goes better than expected, but I do fully expect in the matchup that running this version of the sideboard, the more controlling version, as opposed to the earlier one we looked at, which was the more spell-based mirror spell-based removal burn version, I think is going to work better. So this is the alternative choice, again, just for reference, where I bring in the beacon bolts, as I said, and you know, just keep the removal in. So we'll see how it goes. That's Squid or Dragon. The match is tomorrow 8 PM UK time. I'll obviously record the match, the games, or however many there are, and then get it up. But then I will put this up as well, so that, you know, in advance of that, so that you get an idea of more just getting used to the preparation. We know that the competition started. There's been some good matches. Sideboarding is going to start to become important, so I just wanted to share the thoughts on sideboarding. So wish me luck for the match, and we'll see how it goes. Thank you.